Hello everybody, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to show you how to make this exploding pop-up card. It's a very exciting day today, of course, because not only is it the first day that the annual catalogue goes live, it's also the first day that the new online exclusives are released. So I'm going to be using a mixture of both and some trusty old favourites. The designer series paper is actually from the online exclusives, and you can see where the front of the card came, and there is another sheet inside which is all of that design, so it just coordinated perfectly. So without further delay, let me get started and I'll show you the ingredients that we'll be using. As always, of course, all the directions and dimensions and any pertinent graphs or pictures or templates will be on my blog. It's quite easy in the grand scheme of things. There's not as much effort versus the amount of wow factor. So it uses a piece of berry burst, and it's 11 by 4 1/4, and it's scored at 4 1/4 and at 5 1/2. The 5 1/2, of course, is the usual place that we use to scoring an 11-inch piece of cardstock at. So I'll just go ahead and do that, and then what we do is we fold it back on itself. And then what we need to do is secure this down. So it's actually a top book binding. Normally a book binding, of course, would look like this, but it's a top facing book binding. And as you know, that needs to be secured. So let me just go ahead and do that first so that it gets a good chance to dry. So I'm using the liquid Tombow mono glue. It's either use that or a really strong adhesive like the tear and tape. So we're just going to fasten it down. And put that off to one side to dry. The other pieces are a piece of the paper, and it's cut at 4 inches, and it's cut it's cut 4 by 5. So then it's cut down to 4 by 4 and a 1-inch strip which goes across the top of the card. There are 2 circles which I got from Stylish Shapes. The not quite largest and the one a little bit smaller than that. And then I just needed some scraps of basic white to stamp the flowers on. So let me show you the mechanism first though. It's a 6 by 6 piece of designer series paper. And the great thing about this, of course, is if you have a 6 by 6 pack, you can still make this card. You would have to cut the front down a little bit to get the front if you were going to use the same, but that's pretty exciting. So what we need to do is bring in the paper trimmer, and we need to score it diagonally. So I'm going to line up the 2 opposite points in the paper trough. And then the tip is, when you are scoring or cutting something that you're doing on the diagonal, you don't put the blade or the scorer in and push, because you can sort of gnarl the point. So I'm just going to start in the middle and go down, and then back on myself and go up. So we're giving it the valley fold, the down fold on the pattern side on the diagonal, and then I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to line it up at 3 inches, and I'm going to score. It doesn't matter, you can do all the scoring on the same side and then just fold it back on itself, but I'm going to do the same on the other side, put it at the 3 inches and score it. So we've got 3 and 3 and one line across the diagonal. You only need 1 diagonal, and then what we'll do is we will find that 1 diagonal. Come out, wherever you are. And then line up the point and carefully make sure that it's all lined up. Again, you know, my usual piece of advice, depends where it falls on the paper trough. So sometimes you just have to manipulate it that little hair's breadth, and then just finger score it. And then on the opposite side, we are going to fold it in half and finger score it. and then fold the other line and just press it with your fingers. Then the trick for this is you just take the across the diagonal and you push those together, and then they should fold down and make a lovely square. And once you're happy that these 2 points meet nicely and all the edges are the same, then you can go back in and give it a, yep, that'll do, score with your bone folder. So now we've got the mechanism, so it's all coming together. So I'll bring back in the card, and then what we'll do is we will attach the front. Such a pretty colour on this side. It doesn't go at all with the other side, so it would have to be a piece that you couldn't do both sides of the cardstock designer series paper on the same project, but it's awfully pretty. Okay, so we've got glue on the back of the 1-inch piece, and then the last check, of course, is to make sure that the pattern matches up. So we'll go ahead and pop this on the top on the book binding section, and then we will go and put this here. So now you can see the pattern is flowing, and then we'll go about attaching the inside. Now the inside is obviously going to get pulled, so it does need to be attached securely. So again, I am going to use my Tombow liquid glue. If you have a pattern where it matters, although typically most patterns on the designer series paper go on the straight edge, so it needs to be an everywhere pattern, otherwise your pattern is sort of going to be leaning to one side. But both sides of this are the same. It's just if you had any sort of orientation, you might just want to pay attention and make sure you get it the right way up. So we're going to put it carefully between all the points, and the liquid glue is good for this because it just gives you those few moments of slidability, flexibility. And then once you're happy with where the placement is, you can put glue or your form of firm adhesive on this side, and then the best way is to just close the card down onto it and press. Let me just pop the lid back on the glue, and while that's drying, I'll go ahead and show you what I used. So these little scraps, I'm a big believer in use every piece of cardstock to the last scratch you can. So I'm going to be using the Pretty Florals, which is in the new catalogue, and the Pretty Floral dies. So I've already got them mounted onto my acrylic blocks, and I'm going to use fresh freesia for the back. And when I did my last paper pumpkin video, I was away from my craft room. I'm away from home. Let me just plonk this down before it gets dried out and stamp that. So what I brought was a little collection of spots, and I'm still away, so I'm still using my little spots, which are fabulous because they are just as good as big pads. They're just obviously they're a little bit smaller. So then I'm going to use the 2-step, and I'm using Berry Burst, which coordinates with the cardstock, and pop the middle in. And then, well, I just made a liar out of myself because that was supposed to be the greenery and this one was supposed to be the long length. Too busy talking all about being away from home and how genius I think I am for bringing my spots with me. But anyway, let me just show you the principle of it, because those of you who watched my videos before will know that by the power of television and Blue Peter, which is an English TV show, here's one I made earlier anyway. So stamp those, and then I put them with the dies with this die and this die through the die cutting machine, and this is what I ended up with. So phew, lucky for me, it wasn't such a tragedy after all. And then I'm going to take the 2 circles. I'm actually going to bring in my silicone mat because there's a little bit of gluing on a skinny surface and I don't want it to go on my work surface. So I'm just going to put a little bit of glue on the back of here and down the length of the stalk, and that can go on this side of the bigger of the 2 circles that I cut out, and then this one is going to go here. So I just don't want there to be glue on the edge of these 3 petals because I'm going to attach it with dimensionals. So I can just put regular adhesive on there, close the glue, and that will go there. And you can see we didn't want there to be any here where it hangs over. And then from Simply Said, which is one of my most favorite stamp sets, Just a Note, because Just a Note is great because it could be just a note about anything. Just a note to say happy birthday, just a note to say you're fabulous, just a note to say thinking of you. You get the idea. So we'll pop Just a Note in there. And then I was going to put some embellishments. And when I looked at the embellishments I brought with me, I brought 3 packs and they're all lovely, but they weren't quite right. So what I did was, because I come and did my paper pumpkin, the April paper pumpkin, the inked occasions, happened to have, I'm just gonna, oops, trade stamps. This fabulous little butterfly, which I almost used to death on the paper pumpkin one. So I thought, oh, why not utilize this little guy and bring him back in? So we put just 3 little fresh freesia butterflies on, and it just takes away the emptiness of the white surrounding that. And then we'll bring in some dimensionals. And not fling them across my stamping room because that's not where I am. And attach that to the front. And then I was going to put a whole square on the inside, but when I did that, it hid all that beautifulness. So I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to cut a smaller circle. There's still enough just to write a small greeting or stamp a small something on the inside, but it leaves a lot more around the edges. So that can go on the inside. And then when you close it down, you have 2 cards more or less the same. Obviously it just depends where the flowers are. If you like what you've seen, please consider subscribing. Thumbs up are always much appreciated. Thank you very much in advance for those. Like I mentioned, the directions and dimensions will always be on my blog. There is a link to my Stampin' Up! Online store if you want to go and buy the ingredients to copy this. And in the meantime, thanks so much for watching.